Hey everyone, welcome to Crime Weekly News. I'm Derek Levasseur.
And I'm Stephanie Harlow.
And we're going to get right into it tonight. We don't need any timestamps in there, so here we go. Police in Klamath Falls, Oregon say a woman escaped a soundproof cell hidden in the garage of 29-year-old Negasi Zuberi's rented home that he shared with his wife and 2 young children. Crazy. Hearing these stories, it's always fascinating to me. We were just talking about Rex Huberman, I think a couple of weeks ago, where he might have a soundproof room that they're still kind of working on. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's scary because you think these things only happen in the movies, and the reality is they could be happening in your backyard.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder how many soundproof cells are just scattered amongst, around the country in people's homes, in their basements, in their garages. Like this guy had it in his garage. But, we've also heard, remember that one guy who he kept these like girls in the bunker? Do you remember? It was so long ago, but he kept them in a bunker, and it's just bananas to me that it's happening so much. But luckily, for this woman, who, by the way, she has not been named in any of these articles, but she was able to escape pretty quickly. I cannot imagine what would have happened to her had she not. And immediately when I started reading the story, before I even got to the end where they start wrapping up, I was like, this isn't his first time. You don't have a soundproof cell in your garage if you plan on only doing this once, by the way. This is not the moves or the actions of a first timer who's just new to crime.
Well, so, maybe he had intentions to do it multiple times, and we could be lucky.
I don't care if you had intentions to do it multiple times and this was your first, or you'd already done it. Like, you weren't going to do it just once.
No. I agree with that, but you were saying that this wasn't his first time. I'm hoping it is. I agree with you as far as he wasn't planning on only doing this once and stopping, but I'm hoping that this was his first attempt at it and he failed miserably.
I feel like it wasn't, but
okay.
According to the FBI, Zuberi reportedly traveled 450 miles from his home, and he approached a woman on July 15th while posing as an undercover police officer. This woman would later tell the authorities that Zuberi pointed a taser at her, placed her in handcuffs and leg irons before forcing her in the backseat of his silver Honda Pilot. He then transported her 7.5 hours back to his house. He sexually assaulted her periodically throughout that drive. When they got to his house, Zuberi pulled right into the garage, and then he forced this woman into a cell that he had built there in his garage. It was a 5-foot by 10-foot cinder block cell with a metal cell door that the news has said he installed in reverse so it could not be opened from the inside. He gave her a water bottle and a blanket, and he basically was like, here, get a couple hours of sleep. I'll be back. And then he went inside the house to be with his family. And law enforcement would later find out that Zuberi had told his family basically the garage was off limits to them. No one had access to it beside himself. They didn't get into specifics, but I'm going to venture and say there was probably some sort of lock on the garage where you could not access it from inside the house or from outside the house. Like, he probably made sure they couldn't just accidentally wander in there and see, this cell, this cinder block cell that he had built there, because that would be suspicious. When the woman, who, like I said, hasn't been identified, when she woke up, she realized, this is a very bad situation. She needs to get out of there. She couldn't just wait for dude to come back and do whatever he was going to do to her because, likely, I'm not sure, was his face covered? I tend to think probably not, right? Because he drove her 7.5 hours to his house, and he can't be wearing a ski mask that entire time. So more than likely, she saw his face. She would have been able to identify him. This wasn't going to end well for her, and she knew that. So she, by some, I don't know, some miracle or some inner mental strength that she had, she was able to escape by repeatedly punching the metal cell door until the welds broke. She was then able to peel down the metal screen to the point where there was a small opening in the center of the screen door, and she was able to squeeze through it. She then exited a side garage door. She scaled a 6-foot fence before flagging down a passing motorist who then called 911. And on top of that, on top of literally breaking out of this cell with her bare hands, scaling a 6-foot fence, which I couldn't even imagine. Okay, I've tried to climb a fence before. I mean, with enough motivation, maybe I could do it, but it's not easy. She happened to be able to remember where she was, and she was able to lead law enforcement back to the house. And Captain Rob Reynolds of the Klamath Falls Police Department said, quote, "It was impressive especially because she's not from this area and doesn't know anything about our town. She didn't have anything to write down. I'm assuming she did it by memory, end quote. And I just want to say this woman's name has not been revealed, like I said, but I am so impressed with her. I think it's amazing that she took these matters into her own hands. And then, you have to be so stressed in that moment too, like you're escaping and you are running away, but you have to be able to also at the same time have enough cognizance to remember where you are, look at landmarks, even though your only thought at that point is to get to safety. She also had the thought of I've got to make sure this guy gets caught. I cannot let him just continue on with this bullshit. And she was able to remember enough to bring police back.
Yeah, that's great. And I would imagine, as far as the cell's concerned, probably wasn't that well made. I mean, if he's making some makeshift container inside of his own garage, it probably was poorly constructed, and maybe he assumed, due to fear, that whoever was inside wouldn't attempt to break out, because even if they broke out, they may feel like, oh, I'm still going to be trapped inside of his garage, or, what am I going to do from there? There might be cameras outside of it. What happens if I do go out there? Am I going to be killed because I tried to break out?
And you don't even know where you are. You don't know that this is where he lives with his wife and kids. You may think this is a ring of, sex traffickers, and there's people waiting outside with guns to shoot you the second you emerge. You have no idea what's happening.
That's right. So he was probably banking on that fear that she wasn't going to attempt to escape, and luckily for her and for us, she took a shot. She said, you know what, I'd rather try to escape and be killed than stay here and
be killed
and know what's going to happen to me and then be killed anyway. So she made the right move. I'm glad that, I don't want to say it worked out for her, but she got out of it. And I would think with a situation like that, your adrenaline's pumping, you have this heightened sense of awareness. She may not remember streets, but she probably remembered a few landmarks, especially jumping the fence and seeing what was around, looking around for which direction she was going to go, how she was going to get there. She might have just remembered a couple identifiable objects that were known to the local police in the area, where she said, hey, I remember seeing this big rock or the statue or this particular style house. And they probably put her back in the car when she felt up to it, drove her around the area. And sure enough, she was able to point out the direction in which she came from, probably including the fence. They were able to trace it back and found this guy.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so proud of her. So Zuberi was obviously taken into custody on July 16th. So that's another thing. She got taken on July 15th. He's arrested by July 16th. She's instrumental in taking this very dangerous, violent predator off the streets. And she didn't have to be stuck there for days or weeks being tortured and at his whim. She got out of there quick. He actually was arrested after a brief standoff outside a Walmart in Reno, where he was with his wife and kids, and he made a big scene. He started cutting himself and threatening to kill himself like a little pussy. And then they finally were able to get him in. And during a search of his house, law enforcement found a notepad. And this notepad had some things in it. It had a handwritten note that contained the words, Operation Takeover. And underneath that, bullet points read, leave phone at home. Make sure they don't have a bunch of people in their life. You don't want any type of investigation. Oh, good Lord. And then the officer, Captain Rob Reynolds, he said, that was something that raised concern. The information led us to believe that this was pre-planned. I think he targeted people that he didn't think people would miss, end quote. You think? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like stating the obvious here. That's obviously what he meant. There was also a rough sketch found of the underground cement bunker that he was sketching, body armor, handcuffs, leg irons, and a taser. And once again, for the police to say this was obviously pre-planned, yeah, you think? I think that just the fact he had a cement prison cell built in his garage before he kidnapped the woman meant it was pre-planned, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I don't know, maybe he meant this particular incident. I don't know what he was meaning by that one, but yeah, it is pretty obvious that this guy obviously put some thought into it. It wasn't just something where he saw her walking around and said, I'm going to grab her tonight.
I actually built a cement cell in my garage last week. So this is perfect. Yeah, obviously
I wonder if the cell, because sometimes you have situations where an offender will use a pre-existing bomb shelter or.
No, it was built. This is a rented house.
Yeah.
So he built it. He built it for this specific purpose.
Built it for that specific purpose. So it wasn't something that was repurposed.
I don't know why else you would make a cell in your garage and then not let your family in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I know it's probably exactly how it sounds, but sometimes you'll have something made out of concrete or whatever that was used in the past for like storing, firewood or something like that. And you can build on it to create whatever you want. But in this particular case, it does, especially if you had a metal door on it, he probably, just like you said, built it from scratch, knowing what he was going to use it for. And here we are.
Yeah. What a dick. So there's evidence that Zuberi had a history of violence. He has targeted women, and local and federal authorities are searching for other possible victims. So obviously they believe that this was not his first time. And the FBI Portland's assistant special agent in charge, Stephanie Shark, reported that Zuberi had moved frequently. And basically, I believe he just moved to this area in the past 6 months, and it seemed like he and his family moved around quite a bit. He's lived in Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New York, New Jersey, Alabama, and Florida since 2015, which is crazy. That's a lot of states to live in. And so you have to wonder, what is he running from? What is he doing in these states that he feels like once he's done it, he's got to move to a completely different state? And this is where law enforcement is saying, okay, we think that there's more victims out there. If you are one of them, or even if you've lived in these states and someone who maybe is a young woman in your life has gone missing, reach out. So they're asking that anyone with information about Zuberi, who's also gone under some different aliases, such as Sakima, Justin Heish, and Justin Kowalski, they are asking you to contact law enforcement. You can do that by visiting fbi.gov/Zuberi victims. So he's got his own category now. You can also call 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-225-5324. You can also contact the FBI Portland field office at 503-224-4181, or you can call your local FBI office, or you can call or go to the nearest American embassy or consulate. We'll have Shannon put all of that stuff up on the screen. I think it's important at this point because, yes, this guy's in custody, but like I said, there is a very, very strong gut instinct in me that he's done this to other women before in different states. And I don't know if he let them go. I don't know if they just disappeared and never came home and what he did with them. But either way, if there's women out there who have been victims and either come home or didn't, they deserve justice too.
Yeah,
so,
their family deserves answers for sure. So the FBI and local authorities have a lot of work cut out for them. First off, if the wife is cooperative, she's probably going to be the key witness in this whole thing, because she's going to be able to tell them pretty easily if he had said to them in the past, meaning her and the kids, don't go in this garage or don't go down in the basement. Has he ever displayed this behavior in the past for a short period of time where she was restricted from going to certain areas in this home or any home that they had lived in the past? But, let's just assume for the sake of this conversation, she's not going to be cooperative because she's a fool and believes that her husband's innocent. If that's the case, all is not lost. The FBI still has a lot of research, a lot of investigation that they can do. First off, as you mentioned, they can start by going to each area where he previously lived and comparing that to list of potential people that went missing and were never found, specifically women who may be in the same age range or look similar to this victim that we have now, that we can compare maybe something that he's into, what he looks for, right? Is it an older woman? Is it a younger woman? Does it appear that he might have a type, if you will? So you can go through and do all that. And then you can compare, you can actually go to those houses that he previously lived in to see if he created any type of contraption similar to the one they found in this house, which would be an indication that more than likely someone had been there at some point in time. So there's a lot they can do. And then once they go to those areas, especially if the wife is cooperative, they can start to put things together and maybe compare them to victims who went missing in the area where he was living around that same time. And also what I would look at is try to find out exactly when he moved. Because if there's an indication that he moved shortly after committing whatever crime, you can go back to those previous residences and look to see if there's any missing persons in that area that disappeared right around that time and then shortly after he moved. If that's the case, you may be able to connect some dots and point out that maybe this individual was in a similar area that this offender was, and then he moved shortly after. And again, it's a long shot, but if they do their work, I actually think this is a case where they may be able to connect multiple missing persons reports back to this individual.
Although it's difficult because it looks like he traveled quite a ways from where he lived. in order to do this. He traveled 450 miles. So he could be living in these places and then just traveling,
That's a big
further
circumference,
out.
but got to do it.
Yeah. Something interesting about his wife. I read this article. Now, this is the new thing that popped up about this guy. Everyone's talking about it now. That Zuberi used one of his many aliases, Justin Hythe, when he appeared on the long-running legal show, Judge Judy, back in 2018. He was joined by Alicia Westfall, who appears to be the woman that he is still with and married. And he alleged that she threw a glass bottle at him and then ruined several of his suits with bleach. She in turn countersued for a smashed phone in what she described as a false restraining order that he obtained against her. At the time of the filming, the couple were living separately but still share custody of their children. Zuberi told the judge that Westfall showed up at his home one night, accused him of being drunk, and then demanded he return their kids to her. Cell phone video of the altercation shows the pair arguing before Westfall smacks the phone out of Zuberi's hand. It also captured the moment Zuberi flies outside, where Westfall then hurls a bottle at him. Your counterclaim is dismissed, Judge Judy told Westfall at the episode's end, ruling in Zuberi's favor. You destroyed his suits and his computer. Pay the plaintiff in the amount of $2,500. We're finished. So, yeah, it looks like, I don't know. Do you think that this woman really is going to be like kind of a down-ass chick, or is she going to turn on him? I don't know, but it seems to be a toxic sort of environment to begin with. And clearly he appeared on the show using an alias, so she knew he used aliases, and she knew that, he's probably not a good dude, but here we are. She's still with him. It was 2018 when this happened, and she's still with him. And reports from neighbors have claimed that basically he was a menace. Neighbors from where he's lived before. He was a menace, and he lured young girls into his home. So he's been doing this for a while. Those who lived near Negasi Zuberi in a quiet suburb in Vancouver, Washington, told the Post he made money renting out rooms and beds inside a 2-story townhome, which he pretended to own. They also said Zuberi, a married father of 2, would bring, quote, prostitutes and weirdos, end quote, there at all hours of the night. One neighbor who only wanted to be referred to as Danny said he recalled seeing one young woman shivering and crying outside the home in December 2022 after she had a blowout argument with Zuberi. Danny said, quote, I went up and offered her hot tea and some soup because it was freezing. She told me Zuberi took her keys and cell phone, and when I asked her if she wanted me to call the police, she said, no, I don't want to get in trouble with him. It's not worth it. He's crazy. Former neighbors who heard about Zuberi's arrest said they were shocked at the allegations. Many had their own volatile run-ins with him. Another neighbor who didn't want to be named filed a restraining order against Zuberi in March after he allegedly sent a threatening text message saying, I'm going to fuck you up. Zuberi became belligerent after the neighbor would approach him about his large RV parked in front of the house, a violation of the neighborhood's HOA rules. A large RV parked in front of the house would also concern me. Adding, Zuberi got more agitated when he was confronted about the trash piling up on his property. Quote, it was a nightmare. He had pit bulls running around and random people coming in and out of the house. The cops showed up a bunch of times and I never knew what he was going to be up to. I just didn't feel good about him. So after he threatened me, I filed a restraining order because I have a wife and child to protect. I didn't sleep very well for about 6 months because of all the activity that was happening, end quote. Danny said Zuberi also threatened him after being confronted for driving drunk and backing into the neighbor's trash cans. Quote, obviously I came out and told him to go back to his house and to get off my property, but he started threatening me and took off his shirt. He yelled at me and got in my face. That's when I thought he was truly crazy and something was wrong with him. I knew he was crazy. He was capable of doing some crazy stuff. Yeah, so then there's more stories. There's more stories about him. Yeah. And there's more people who are like, yeah, he did this. I always saw girls there. It concerns me, especially that big RV, because, before he had the cell, maybe he was kind of traveling around with that, grabbing women. It looks like this woman that he grabbed, the one who got away, she was a sex worker. So maybe he's been doing this for a while. Once again, going after a population of people that he thinks don't have anybody who care about them, who don't have people who are going to miss them, who are in a very dangerous line of work where they're going to be at risk for this type of thing. So, and also, maybe in a desperate kind of situation where they're going to take money and not think twice about, getting into a vehicle with a man because that is part of their job. So he's taking advantage of this. Did he use that RV to go around the country and pick women up and keep them hostage for hours or days and sexually assault them? Why else would he have an RV? He doesn't seem like the camping type. Okay.
Yeah, not only that, we'll see how it goes, but the FBI What I'm hearing is a situation where this woman was just completely oblivious to the things going on around her, making her basically a moron, or she knew what was going on to a certain degree. And even if she didn't, there's nothing stopping interrogators from bringing her in a room and grilling her and saying, listen, from everything we're hearing, there's no way you wouldn't have known what was going on. So you know what that means to us? You could be charged as a co-conspirator, and then your kids go into the system. If you don't want that to happen, you need to start talking, and you need to start talking now. And we need to know everything. And if we find out that you're keeping anything out or you're omitting certain facts to try to protect them, you're going to prison as well. Your call. So they might be able to use her to build their case to find out where, literally and figuratively, unfortunately, the bodies are buried. And if that's true, although she may not want to do it, she may be a critical piece of this puzzle when it comes to trying to track down anyone or everyone that he potentially took and possibly killed, so that they can start getting some answers and start creating a track. The more people they find, by the way, too, they'll be able to develop a profile on them, which they can then use to compare it to the missing persons list that they have to see if there are other individuals who are geographically in a familiar area to him and fit the type that he would normally go for. All those things. Was it a sex worker, someone with a certain color hair? We don't know what his thing was. She may be able to shed light on that.
Yeah, and even if this was his first time, chances are it wouldn't have been his last, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
If this was his first time and it was a failed attempt, thank God, because, I mean, he had written down the plan, leave your phone at home, like he knows he might be traced or tracked. Take somebody who nobody's going to miss. We don't want a big investigation. Like, clearly this is planned out. He's thought about this. And, I mean, thankfully, in the 2023, it's just much harder to get away with things. You've got cell phone tracking. You've got cameras everywhere, like even on the highways and things. So it's harder to do crime now, but you still have people like him who are going to try, like literally orchestrate this master plan. And hopefully this was his first time and it failed and he'll be in prison now. But you know what sucks? He won't go to prison for very long because he didn't kill anybody. And these days, even if you do kill somebody, you don't go to prison for life anymore. So I guarantee you, like, this kind of guy, you give him 5 years for like kidnapping, he'll be out and he'll do it again. He won't stop. Like, people like this who kidnap people and lock them in cells in their garage, they need to do a little bit more time than that, because this is a serious, like, it's a serious flaw in the system where we don't look at the context of things. We don't look at these specifics. We're just like, oh, kidnapping? Well, that's only this long. Instead of being like kidnapping and you sexually assaulted her all the way there. You took her 7.5 hours away from where you got her. You locked her in your freaking garage in a cell that you built. You premeditated this and planned this, and you're not right in the head. You know, we don't look at those details. We're just like, kidnapping? Oh, you did kidnapping? Okay, this is how much you get. And so this is concerning that this dude could be out, you know, not after a long time.
That's why it's important to connect anybody else who may have been a victim of something he's done in the past. You want to get it now while you have him in custody. He's not going anywhere anytime soon, so they have plenty of time. But you would like to tie in any other crimes that he committed so that you can make sure he's never allowed to do it again. And the only way to do that is to keep him in prison. And can't control the way the laws are written, but you can control your investigation. And it's one thing to get him on this. You were lucky enough that the victim basically solved the case for you. Now it's time to put on those little federal agent jackets and go out there and arrest some people or find some witnesses. Do what you need to do to lock this guy up for the rest of his life, legally and ethically, of course. But find anybody he's attached to so that he may think that, oh, good thing they don't know about all this other stuff. But by the time he gets wind of it from the prosecutors, he realizes they've tied him into hopefully a dozen of these types of things so that he never sees the light of day again.
I'm sure he knows they're going to try.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how it goes. Any final words from you?
No. Just make sure everybody listening, if you look at this guy's picture, if you're, you are watching on YouTube because this is video
YouTube only right now.
Yeah. So make sure you look at his picture. Shannon's going to post a picture of what he's looked like. He's got short hair in one, long hair in the other. Look at his picture. Listen to the different aliases he uses. And if you recognize this person, you've ever had, any interaction with him at all, even if you weren't a victim of his, call those numbers or, submit your tip, because any information and any evidence is going to be helpful on getting this guy off the streets forever.
Couldn't agree more. And guys, listen, if you're someone who's interested in true crime and the way that we particularly cover these stories, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We also come out on audio as well on Fridays for our main episode we do, which is just Crime Weekly. Like, comment, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Everyone stay safe out there. We will see you Sunday with a new video.
Yes.
Karen Horman Part 2.
Yes.
Have a good night.
Bye.